Hello everybody. So much of being a part of an online business or mobile game is managing your marketing spend or user acquisition budget. In most scenarios, online businesses will have partnerships with ad networks that send them paid installs. And with those paid installs, you're hoping some percentage of them will retain and grow your digital audience and also become lifelong spenders. So what we're going to do is today I'm going to show you how to zero in on a specific ad network and see if their performance is getting better or worse over time. That way you have some sort of indication if you should invest more of your marketing budget with them or less. So if we take a quick look at the analysis behind me, we're looking at ad network 16 and we're looking at its performance or average revenue per user or install for January of 2023, 2024, and 2025. And as you can see, the date of this recording is January 20th, 2025. So January 2025 isn't a complete month yet, but we're comparing it to historical Januaries to see how we're trending. And in this specific use case, we're trending about 25% better than January 2023 and 2024. So let me show you how to recreate this for your own business in MySQL. Okay, so here we are in MySQL. The first thing we need to do is just identify installs that are coming in from ad network 16. So here's a quick view of that SQL table, and in order to return just installs from ad network 16, we're going to do where attribution name equals ad network 16. Okay, wonderful. Now let's return the very first install instance for customers that were brought in on ad network 16. So we will do customer ID, and then we will take the install date and then just take them in here. And we can just reuse that name and just call this install date. And then don't forget to group by customer ID. Okay, let's return a few records. Okay, great. So here are the install dates per customer for customers coming in on ad network 16. Let's put this in a subselect. We can just call this installs. And we're going to do a couple of things up here. Let's make sure to bring up the fields from this subselect here. And remember, the subselect is called installs. So we will bring in installs.customerID. So it's saying from this subselect called installs, right? Bring in this field called customer ID. Then we'll do installs.install date. And if you noticed in our analysis, we were looking at the performance of ad network 16 segmented by install month. So let's get that install month field in our data set. This is going to convert our install date to the first day of the month. We can call this install month. And then if you also remember, on the x-axis of our analysis, we were looking at the leading 90-day ARPU performance by install month for ad network 16. So we need to bring in those leading date values. We have a table of dates, and it's called dim date. And here it is in the second column. It's just a column of date values that we're going to use. So let's do this. We'll do a left join over to this date table. We will call this dates, and we'll do it on the date or leading date value has to be greater than or equal to the install date value from our first table, or table 1. Okay, wonderful. So let's add this here, and we can just call this leading dates, knowing that these leading date values that we were bringing across have to be greater than or equal to this install date value. And then if you also remember, on the x-axis in our analysis, we use days since install as our values. So let's add that field now. We'll take this leading date and do a date diff between that and our install date, and we'll call this days since install. Okay. Let's bring back a few sample records. Let's remove these aliases. We'll do a limit 1,000. And let's go ahead and run this. Okay, great. So here's our sample 1,000 records. And as you can see here, we have a customer ending in 3031 that installed February 16, 2024. And we have the leading date values, which are dates that are greater than or equal to the install date. And you can see that with these leading dates and the install date, we are computing days since install as a difference between the two. So because we're looking at average revenue per user, the one thing that's missing in this data set is revenue. We want to figure out how much cumulative or running total revenue we have for each of these ascending leading dates. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Since we feel comfortable with what we have, let's remove this order by and put everything in another subselect that we can call players. And let's bring up these fields. We just need to change the prefix here. Now, again, what we need to do is join over to a revenue table on customer ID and bring across all revenue transactions that happen on or before or prior to February 26, 2024 and sum it to get a cumulative value. And we're going to do that for each one of these leading dates. So we will also do that for March 1st, 2024, where we join on customer ID and bring across all revenue transactions that are less than or equal to March 1st, 2024, so that we get a total summation of revenue generated up through and equal to this point in time. Okay, so let's do that. I'll show you our revenue table. It is called Fact Player Revenue. And here are those revenue transactions. And again, we want to do a left join over to this revenue table or table 2 on customer ID, and where the purchase date is less than or equal to the leading date value, so that we can get or compute a summation of revenue up through that leading date value, representing total revenue generated between the install date and the leading date value. Okay, so let's do that. Do left join over to this revenue table. We can just rename it revenue, and we'll do it on the customer ID. And we'll do where the purchase date from table 2 has to be less than or equal to the leading date value in table 1. And what do we want to do? We want to sum the revenue, so the purchase amount field from table 2. So we will do that. We'll say from table 2, we want to bring in the purchase amount, and we want to sum it. And we can just call this revenue. Let's bring across a few records. Okay, wonderful. So here's our sample data set with a random 1,000 records. And as you can see, we were able to bring in that revenue field. So what does this represent, this $49.99? Well, it's the total amount of revenue that's been generated for this player ending in 0658 between the install date, which was December 10th, 2023, and this leading date value, which is January 10th, 2025. So the same thing with these additional records here, where the $49.99 represents the total amount of revenue generated for this customer between the install date and this leading date value right here, representing a running total or a cumulative sum of revenue, meaning the revenue value either stays the same or goes up as the leading date values move forward or ascendingly in time. Okay, so we're almost done with the query portion. The only thing we need to do is aggregate this information. So let's do this and call our final subselect ag. And what we want to do is we want to segment or dimensionalize this data by two things. Days since install, since that's on the x-axis, and then the actual install month, because that's what we're comparing. January 2023, 2024, and 2025 for just ad network 16. Let's do a count of this to get our installs or our denominator, and then our numerator is going to be revenue. We're going to be doing revenue divided by installs, and it's going to be cumulative revenue. Call this cumulative revenue right here. Okay, and we are finished. Let's go ahead and look at our entire query in its totality and go ahead and run it. Okay, great everybody. So here is our final aggregated data set. The only thing that I would recommend with this is let's round these cumulative revenue numbers to the nearest whole number. So I will add that now and we can rerun it. We want to say round this revenue or cumulative revenue number to the 0 decimal place, so to the nearest whole number. So let's grab all of this and rerun it. Okay, great. So here's our final aggregated data set. But before we move this over to Excel, I just want to step through the inner mechanics and business value of this query that we wrote together. So the very first thing we did is we went to our installs table and we grabbed paid installs that were coming in from Ad Network 16. And we took the min install date. We want the very first install instance for paid installs coming in on Ad Network 16. And then we joined over to the date table where the date value has to be greater than or equal to the install date, bringing across all those leading date values. And then what we did is we went over to the revenue table and we brought across revenue that was less than or equal to the leading date value, giving us a running total or cumulative sum of revenue per customer per leading date value, going forward all the way up from the install date to the present date. And then from there, we basically just aggregated the information to the dimensions that we're going to segment this by, which is days since install and then install month for Ad Network 16. So now that we have all that covered, let's go over to Excel. Okay, so here we are in Excel. The only thing we need to do is divide cumulative revenue by installs. Okay, so let's go ahead and transpose this data a little bit in a pivot table. So select all of that data and create a pivot table. And what we're going to do is put days since install on the rows, install month across the top in the form of columns. Let's get rid of years, quarters, months, and then put revenue per install cumulatively right in the center of the pivot table. And we only want to look at January 2025 versus January 2024 versus January 2023. And then we're going to go into our label filters and say, let's just look at the leading 90 days from install. And obviously for January 2025, we're not going to have a full leading 90 days, but we'll be able to look at the early performance and compare it to historical performance to see if we're over-invested in this ad network, under-invested, or if the performance is far outstripping and doing better than January 2023 and 2024, warranting more or continued investment there. Okay, let's remove these grand totals. Let's select all of our data and create a chart. Okay, so this is pretty amazing. So if you work on a user acquisition team as an analyst, your main duty or responsibility is to look at the same ad network and measure its performance over time. So today we selected one ad network 16, and we were looking at the revenue per install cumulatively across different install months. Now, the date of this recording is January 20th, 2025. So that month is not fully complete, but we want to check that performance versus the historical performance of January 2023 and 2024. And as you can see here, we're doing great. We are overperforming against those two historical months. We're actually doing 25% better. This gray trend line here represents January 2025. And being 25% better means that we should for sure continue to invest in Ad Network 16, and even with this analysis have the justification to increase our user acquisition budget with Ad Network 16, given the fact that this early indicator is showing that we are doing 25% better for the same ad network presently versus the historical months of January 2023 and 2024. I hope this tutorial was useful. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.